So 250 years ago, right now, the revolution was well underway. The American Revolution had been started. The Continental Congress was meeting in this building, Independence Hall. And one thing I've been doing every day is just checking letters that the Founding Fathers wrote back and forth to each other. So I figured I'd check today and see if I find anything interesting and share it with you. I've got my laptop right here. So I'm gonna be looking down and checking for letters. Okay, good morning. Today is July 8th, and we have, let's see, 6 letters here to check out. Let's see what they are. Editorial note on the Olive Branch Petition. Benjamin Franklin and Mary Hewson, general orders to George Washington's from the Fairfax Independent Company, from George Washington to Lund, Washington, and second petition from Congress to the King. Okay, so we have a few official documents. Let's start with general orders, and we'll go into the rest afterwards. General Orders, 8th of July, 1775. Parole, Essex. Ordered that the main guard, on no account whatever, be without a drum, which is to beat to arms on any alarm and be followed by all the drums in the camp, on which every officer and soldier is immediately to repair to the alarm post. The commanding officer of each regiment or corps in Cambridge, as soon as the men are paraded after an alarm, to send an officer to headquarters for orders. The commanding officers at Roxbury, Prospect Hill, Winter Hill, and Sewell's Point to send expresses in case of alarm to headquarters with an account of the situation and the movements of the enemy. If they are not each provided with a horse for that purpose, the Adjutant General to apply to the Committee of Supplies. Colonel Gridley of the Artillery, or the next in command, to give in a return of his men, stores, and ammunition agreeable to the order of the 4th instant, and to distinguish the posts to which his regiment is assigned in case of alarm. The same order as to a return of the men, ammunition, and blankets is given to the commanding officers of the regiments of late Colonel Gardner's, Colonel Glover's, and Colonel Gerrish's, who have omitted complying with the above orders hitherto. The commanding officers at Winter Hill, Prospect Hill, and Roxbury are to make particular enquiry into the ammunition of the men in those lines, and if there is any deficiency, immediately to report it to the general at headquarters. A general court-martial is ordered to set on Monday next 10 o'clock a.m. for the trial of Lieutenant Brigham, charged with, quote, rescuing a prisoner when in lawful custody, end quote. Footnote number 1, Sewell's Point, located on the south side of the Charles River, about 2 miles downstream from Cambridge, was the site of an American redoubt, which some called Brookline Fort. For the horses that were provided for this and other posts, see Council of War, 9th of July. And George Washington to James Warren, 10th of July. Okay, footnote number 2, George Gridley was appointed chief engineer of the Massachusetts forces by the Provincial Congress of 26 April 1775, and about the same time he was asked to organize a train of artillery. Gridley was a natural choice for both jobs, having studied military engineering under a British officer as a young man and having commanded provincial artillery during the Crown Point expedition of 1755 and at Quebec in 1759. On 23rd of June 1775, the Provincial Congress gave Gridley a commission as chief engineer and colonel of the Massachusetts Artillery with the rank of Major General. And on 20th of September, the Continental Congress commissioned him colonel of the Continental Artillery. So great were the antagonisms that he engendered in the artillery corps, however, that Congress was forced to remove him from his command on 17th of November. Gridley continued to serve as chief engineer in the Army until sometime in 1776, and he was engineer general for the Eastern Department from 1777 to 1780. Footnote number 3. Joseph Reed wrote to Colonel Samuel Garish in 7th of July, 1775, quote, "I am directed by His Excellency to the General to beg you would without delay see that a return is made of your regiment agreeable to orders issued the 4th instant. The express to the Continental Congress has been detained sometime through this inattention, the forces raised in Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island having sent in their returns very complete," end quote. George Washington was anxious to forward a full report on the strength of the Army to the Continental Congress in accordance with Congress's instructions of 22nd of June. But delays in obtaining the returns from the Massachusetts regiments named here obliged him to wait until 10th of July. Samuel Garish of Newbury, Massachusetts, was cashiered on 19th of August, 1775 for conduct unbecoming an officer. Footnote number 4. At the end of this paragraph, the Reed copy includes the sentence, quote, "the prisoner to have notice today," end quote. Near the bottom of the page appears the memorandum, quote, "Lieutenant Brigham belongs to Captain Wood's company, General Ward's regiment," end quote. Timothy Brigham was actually first lieutenant of Captain Samuel Hood's company in Major General Artemus Ward's Massachusetts regiment. Okay, next let's click into the second petition from Congress to the King. Now this is a longer, I'm guessing, this looks long. So we're gonna read this. This is also an official document, so, wow, look at that, all the names. Okay, so we will read this at the end, but it looks interesting. I'm going to save this to the end in case we have, so that we don't run out of time for the other letters. Sorry about that, I had to fix the microphone. This is the editorial note on the Olive Branch Petition, 8th of July, 1775. Editorial note, okay. By the beginning of June 1775, the shadow of coming events lay over the delegates in Philadelphia. Boston was informally besieged. New York went in fear of British attack, and at any moment the colonies might find themselves at the point of no return. Moderates were appalled at the prospect and recoiled from commitment to civil war until the last stone had been turned in search of compromise. They faced strong opposition in Congress, but eventually secured agreement, grudging in many cases for a final appeal to the King. On June 3rd, a committee of 5, including Franklin, was appointed to draw up a petition. On the 19th, the committee submitted its draft, the work of John Dickinson, which the Congress adopted on July 8th, with virtually no amendment, and which all its members signed as individuals. The petition was couched in generalities, as it had to be to secure approval. Although it professed deep loyalty, it offered no concessions and asked for none, except the repeal of unspecified statutes that distressed the colonies. It left the whole problem of reconciliation to the ingenuity of Whitehall. And there it made small impression, because, as William Knox pointed out, quote, "not one profession of what they will submit to is contained in it." Okay, there's too much going on. They're mowing the grass here today at Independence Hall. And I can't really hear myself think, or let alone read into a microphone. I don't even know if you can hear me talking right now, but so I'm gonna take a break, and we'll either come back later today or I'll finish reading it indoors. But before we go, here's Independence Hall. And we're back. Okay, I'm gonna restart that last sentence because it was I was a little distracted. So we'll start at the beginning or in the middle of this paragraph. So the petition was couched in generalities as it had to be to secure approval. Although it professed deep loyalty, it offered no concessions and asked for none, except the repeal of unspecified statutes that distressed the colonies. It left the whole problem of reconciliation to the ingenuity of Whitehall, and there it made small impression because, as William Knox pointed out, not one profession of what they will submit to is contained in it. No evidence has come to light that Franklin played any part in framing the petition or had any real hope for it. On its arrival, he was quoted as saying months later, quote, "The ministry might think best to relax a little, but it was by no means to be trusted to," end quote. During his negotiations in London the previous winter, he had offered specific and uncompromising terms, and had not coated them with professions of American loyalty. His approach had been crisply practical. Even by that time, he had lost all faith in petitioning as a method of redress, and he had seen Whitehall's studied neglect of the petition from the first Congress. When he now concurred in this gesture from the second, the reason was presumably that he wanted every effort made, however hopeless, before accepting the alternative of war. Okay, and here are some footnotes. I won't read them, except for footnote number 8, John Knox, Clements Library. The petition went unanswered. So there you go. You can pause and read the rest if you want. Next, let's click into George Washington from the Fairfax Independent Company. And we'll read this letter. Alexandria, July 8th, 1775. May it please your excellency, your favor of the 20 ULO notifying your intended departure for the camp we received, and after transmitting copies to the different officers to whom it was directed, we laid it before a full meeting of your company this day. At the same time, that they deplore the unfortunate occasion that calls you, their patron and friend and worthy citizen, from them, and your more tender connections. They beg your acceptance of their most hearty congratulations upon your appointment to the supreme military command of the American Confederated Forces. Firmly convinced, sir, of your zealous attachment to the rights of your country and those of mankind, and of your earnest desire that harmony and good should again take place between us and our parent state, we well know that your every exertion will be invariably employed to preserve the one and effect the other. Your kind recommendation that a strict attention be had to disciplining the company shall be complied with, and every possible method used for procuring arms and munition. We are to inform you, sir, by desire of the company, that if at any time you shall judge it expedient for them to join the troops at Cambridge or to march elsewhere, they will cheerfully do it. As the success of our arms during the unhappy contest for our liberties will ever afford us the highest satisfaction, and as reports heretofore have been various and unauthentic, we entreat your excellency, should there be any future engagement and your leisure permit, to favor us with an account. Let our concerns for the cause we are embarked in, claim your excuse for this freedom. We now recommend you to the favor of him, of whom kings reign and princes decree justice, and wishing all your counsels and operations to be directed by his gracious providence to an happy and lasting union between us and Great Britain. We are, with great regard for selves and the company, your excellency's most obedient and humble servants, James Hendricks, George Gilpin, Robert H. Harrison. L.S. in Robert Hanson Harrison's writing, DLC George Washington. Each officer signed his own name. James Hendricks of Alexandria was captain of the Fairfax Independent Company. He became major of the 6th Virginia Regiment in February 1776, lieutenant colonel of that regiment the following August, and colonel of the 1st Virginia Regiment in 1777. In September 1777. Hendricks resigned his commission in March 1778. George Gilpin and Robert Hanson Harris were lieutenants in the Fairfax Independent Company. Both men were natives of Maryland who moved to Alexandria in the late 1760s. Gilpin, a wheat merchant and flour inspector, served as major of the Fairfax County Militia from 1777 to 1778, and apparently became colonel of the militia before the end of the war. In the 1780s, he was closely associated with George Washington as one of the directors of the Potomac Company. Harrison, a lawyer whose services George Washington used on several occasions before the Revolution, served as clerk of the Fairfax County Committee of Safety from 1774 and 1775. He was appointed one of George Washington's aides-de-camp in 6 November 1775, and on 16 May 1776, he became George Washington's military secretary. He held the latter position until March 1781, when he resigned to become Chief Justice of the Maryland General Court. Footnote number 1, George Washington's letter of 20th of June 1775 was addressed to the officers of the independent companies in the 5 Virginia counties of Fairfax, Prince William, Fauquier, Spotsylvania, and Richmond. Continuing with George Washington, let's look at From George Washington to Lund, Washington, 8th of July, 1777. Letter not found. To Lund, Washington, 8th of July, 1775. In a letter of 17th of October, 1775, to George Washington, Lund, Washington referred to George Washington's letter of July 8th. Okay. Next, let's read from Benjamin Franklin to Mary Hewson. Philadelphia, July 8th, 1775. My dear friend, I thank you for your kind letter of April 11th. It grieves me that the present situation of public affairs makes it not eligible for you to come hither with your family, because I am sure you would otherwise like this country, and might provide better here for your children, at the same time that I should be made more happy by your neighborhood and company. I flatter myself that this may yet happen, and that our public disputes may be ended by the time your private business is settled to your mind, and then we may be all happy together. The debt you mention of mine to Bolton remained unpaid through his own neglect. I was charged by Matthews 10 shillings or 10 pounds, 10, I guess it's pounds, 10 pounds, for the tea kitchen. But Bolton told me I ought not to pay so much, that he would see what it should be when he got home, and send me word, which he never did. I dunned him for it by letters, as often as Matthews sent to me, but received no answer. I take it kindly of my godson that he should remember me, my love to him. I am glad to hear that I am glad to hear the dear children are all well through the measles. I have much delight in my grandsons. Mr. and Mrs. Bach, join in love to you and yours. Ben, when I delivered him your blessing, inquired the age of Elizabeth, and thought her yet too young for him. But as he made no other objection, and that will lessen every day, I have only to wish being alive to dance with your mother at the wedding. Temple was much obliged by your kind remembrance of him. He is now very happy with his father at Amboy near New York, but returns to me in September to prosecute his studies in our college. I am much pleased with the contribution letter, and thank you for your share in it. I am still well and hearty, and never went through more business than I do at present. God knows when I shall be permitted to enjoy the repose I wish. Adieu, my very dear friend. Continue your pleasing correspondence, and believe me ever yours most affectionately, Benjamin Franklin. Mrs. Houston. Notation, Phil, July 9, 1775. Note, numbering follows Franklin Papers source, the Franklin Papers source. Footnote number 3. In her missing letter of April 11, Polly must have discussed her dream, which came true 11 years later, of emigrating with her family to America. The private business that detained her, which had to do with her legacy, is discussed in her letter below of December 12. Footnote number 4. A large tea kettle or urn, probably the one that Benjamin Franklin sent William Franklin in March 1773. William Matthews, a London watchmaker, was Bolton's chief agent in the city, charged with soliciting orders, showing designs and samples, dealing with craftsmen who made parts, and collecting bills. For Bolton, whom Benjamin Franklin had known for years, see above, and subsequent volumes. Footnote number 5. Benjamin Franklin's godson was William Houston, Polly's eldest. Elizabeth, her youngest, was approaching her first birthday and Benjamin Franklin Bach his 6th. Footnote number 6. See Benjamin Franklin and William WTF. That's Benjamin Franklin's grandson, William T. Franklin, above, June 13th. I think we read that letter. So you can go to June 13th and listen to that video. Footnote number 7. For the gifts from the Constitutional Society to relieve impoverished Bostonians, see Lee to Benjamin Franklin above, April 3rd. Polly, in her missing April letter, doubtless referred to the donation voted on March 21st and enclosed a copy of the request for contributions. She might, from Benjamin Franklin's phrasing, have had a share in composing it, but he probably means that she had contributed. That does it for the letters, so let's now turn to this long document here. It is the second petition from Congress to the King. July 8th, 1775. To the King's most excellent Majesty, most gracious Sovereign, we, your Majesty's faithful subjects of the colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, the counties of Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex on Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, in behalf of ourselves and the inhabitants of these colonies, who have deputed us to represent them in General Congress, entreat your Majesty's gracious attention to this our humble petition. The union between our mother country and these colonies, and the energy of mild and just government, produced benefits so remarkably important, and afforded such an assurance of their permanency and increase, that the wonder and envy of our nations were excited, while they beheld Great Britain rising to a power the most extraordinary the world had ever known. Her rivals, observing that there was no probability of this happy connection being broken by civil dissensions, and apprehending its future effects, if left any longer undisturbed, resolved to prevent her receiving such continual and formidable accessions of wealth and strength, by checking the growth of these settlements from which they were to be derived. In the prosecution of this attempt, events so unfavorable to the design took place, that every friend in the interests of Great Britain and these colonies entertained pleasing and reasonable expectations of seeing an additional force and exertion immediately given to the operations of the Union hitherto experienced, by an enlargement of the dominions of the Crown, and the removal of ancient and warlike enemies to a greater distance. At the conclusion, therefore, of the late war, the most glorious and advantageous that ever had been carried on by British arms, your loyal colonists, having contributed to its success by such repeated and strenuous exertions as frequently procured them by distinguished approbation of your Majesty, of the late King, and of Parliament, doubted not but that they should be permitted with the rest of the empire to share in the blessings of peace and the emoluments of victory and conquest. While these recent and honorable acknowledgments of their merits remained on record in the journals and acts of that august legislature, the Parliament, undefaced by the imputation or even the suspicion of any offense, they were alarmed by a new system of statutes and regulations adopted for the administration of the colonies, that filled their minds with the most painful fears and jealousies, and to their inexpressible astonishment perceived the dangers of a foreign quarrel quickly succeeded by domestic dangers, in their judgment of a more dreadful kind. Nor were their anxieties alleviated by any tendency in this system to promote the welfare of the mother country, for though its effects were more immediately felt by them, yet its influence appeared to be injurious to the commerce and prosperity of Great Britain. We shall decline the ungrateful task of describing the irksome variety of artifices practiced by many of your Majesty's ministers, the delusive pretenses, fruitless terrors, and unavailing severities that have from time to time been dealt out by them in their attempts to execute this impolitic plan, or of tracing through a series of years past the progress of the unhappy differences between Great Britain and these colonies which have flowed from this fatal source. Your Majesty's ministers, persevering in their measures and proceeding to open hostilities for enforcing them, have compelled us to arm in our own defense, and have engaged us in a controversy so peculiarly abhorrent to the affections of your still faithful colonists, that when we consider whom we must oppose in this contest, and if it continues, what may be the consequences, our own particular misfortunes are accounted by us only as parts of our distress. Knowing to what violent resentments and incurable animosities civil disorders are apt to exasperate and inflame the contending parties, we think ourselves required by indispensable obligations to Almighty God, to your Majesty, to our fellow subjects, and to ourselves, immediately to use all the means in our power not incompatible with our safety, for stopping the further effusion of blood, and for averting the impending calamities that threaten the British Empire. Thus, called upon to address your Majesty on affairs of such moment in America, and probably to all your dominions, we are earnestly desirous of performing this office with the utmost deference to your Majesty, and we therefore pray that your royal magnanimity and benevolence may make the most favorable construction of our expressions on so uncommon an occasion. Could we represent in their full force the sentiments that agitate the minds of us, your dutiful subjects, we are persuaded your Majesty would ascribe any seeming deviation from reverence in our language and even in our conduct, not to any reprehensible intention, but to the impossibility of reconciling the usual appearances of respect with a just attention to our own preservation against those artful and cruel enemies who abuse your royal confidence and authority for the purpose of effecting our destruction. Attached to your Majesty's person, family, and government, with all the devotion that principle and affection can inspire, connected with Great Britain by the strongest ties that can unite societies, and deploring every event that tends to, in any degree, to weaken them, we solemnly assure your Majesty that we not only most ardently desire the former harmony between her and these colonies may be restored, but that a concord may be established between them upon so firm a basis as to perpetuate its blessing uninterrupted by any future dissensions to succeeding generations in both countries, and to transmit your Majesty's name to posterity, adorned with that signal and lasting glory that has attended the memory of those illustrious personages whose virtues and abilities have extricated states from dangerous convulsions, and by securing happiness to others have erected the most noble and durable monuments to their own fame. We beg leave further to assure your Majesty that notwithstanding the sufferings of your loyal colonists during the course of the present controversy, our breasts retain too tender a regard for the kingdom from which we derive our origin to request such a reconciliation as might in any manner be inconsistent with her dignity or her welfare. These, related as we are to her, honor and duty, as well as inclination, induce us to support and advance, and the apprehension that now oppress our hearts with unspeakable grief being once removed, your Majesty will find your faithful subjects on this continent ready and willing at all times, as they ever have been with their lives and fortunes, to assert and maintain the rights and interests of your Majesty and for our mother country. We therefore beseech your Majesty that your royal authority and influence may be graciously interposed to procure us relief from our afflicting fears and jealousies occasioned by the system before mentioned, and to settle peace through every part of your dominions, with all humility submitting to your Majesty's wise consideration, whether it may not be expedient for facilitating those important purposes, that your Majesty be pleased to direct some mode by which the united applications of your faithful colonists to the throne, in pursuance of their common counsels, may be improved into a happy and permanent reconciliation, and that in the meantime measures be taken for preventing the further destruction of the lives of your Majesty's subjects, and that such statutes as more immediately distress any of your Majesty's colonies be repealed. For by such arrangements as your Majesty's wisdom can form for collecting the united sense of your American people, we are convinced your Majesty would receive such satisfactory proofs of the disposition of the colonists toward their sovereign and the parent state, that the wished for opportunity would soon be restored to them, of evincing the sincerity of their professions by every testimony of devotion, becoming the most dutiful subjects and the most affectionate colonists. That your Majesty may enjoy a long and prosperous reign, and that your descendants may govern your dominions with honor and themselves, and honored with... Let me restart that. that your majesty may enjoy a long and prosperous reign, and that your descendants may govern your dominions with honor to themselves and happiness to their subjects, is our sincere and fervent prayer. John Hancock. Colony of New Hampshire, John Langdon. Colony of Massachusetts Bay, Thomas Cushing, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne. Colony of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, Stephen Hopkins, Samuel Ward. Colony of Connecticut, Elephant Dyer, Roger Sherman, Silas Deane. Colony of New York, Philip Livingston, James Duane, John Alsop, Francis Lewis, John Jay, Robert R. Livingston Jr., Lewis Morris, William Floyd, Henry Wisner. New Jersey, William Livingston, John DeHart, Richard Smith. Pennsylvania, John Dickinson, Benjamin Franklin, James Wilson, Charles Humphreys, Edward Biddle. Counties of Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex on Delaware, Caesar Rodney, Thomas M. Keene, George Reed, Maryland, Thomas Tilghman, Thomas Johnson Jr., William Paca, Samuel Chase, Thomas Stone. I think that's Thomas Stone. Colony of Virginia, Patrick Henry Jr., I'm guessing P. Henry Jr., Richard Henry Lee, Edmund Pendleton, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Jefferson. North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes. South Carolina, Henry Middleton, Thomas Lynch, Christian Gadsden, John Rutledge, I believe it's John Rutledge, Edward Rutledge. Let's read this explanation. The engrossed original contains autographed signatures of the delegates to Congress and is endorsed, quote, Petition of the Congress to the King, September 1st, 1775. Delivered to the Earl of Dartmouth by Masters Penn and Lee, end quote. A second engrossed and signed copy of this document was acquired by the New York Public Library in 1948. This document was written by John Dickinson with much satisfaction and was signed by Thomas Jefferson and some of the other delegates with considerably less satisfaction. The petition was met with royal disregard in England. So that was the Olive Branch Petition. Here is I wanted to show this photo of the signature page. You can see John Hancock's massive signature here at the top, and then everybody else's signature beneath. If you liked this reading of the Olive Branch Petition and other letters on July 8th, 1775, please give a like and a subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.